Mr. Speaker, nice to see you.
Great to have you back, Greta. I'm glad you're back on the air.
It's fun. I'm glad. This is adventure. It's always fun to start a new job.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I want to ask you a few questions about news of the day, and then since we're at your retreat here in Philadelphia, I want to find out about your plan for the next 200 days, your legislative plan. So let me start first with the news of the day. President Trump says he wants an investigation into voter fraud. You for it or against it?
I think it's fine. I think, first of all, I'm sure there is some fraud. We passed photo ID in Wisconsin because of our concerns about this a few years ago. But if he believes that there's a problem to be looked at, the right thing to do is to get an investigation to get the facts. I haven't seen evidence of this kind of widespread numbers that we've been hearing about. So the thing to do is to get an investigation to get the facts and then make a judgment based on the facts.
All right. He has made it sound like that's why he lost the popular vote. You believe that?
Hey, he's president of the United States. I think that speaks for itself.
Okay. Are you going to have an investigation on Capitol Hill? Do you want us to have one of your committees?
We haven't been discussing that, and I'm not sure exactly what nature of investigation he wants. But look, like I said, if there's a concern here, then the right thing to do is to investigate and find the facts and then act accordingly.
Today he announced that he wants to begin building that wall. Mm-hmm. Who's going to pay for it?
Well, first off, we're going to pay for it and front the money up, but I do think that there are various ways of, as you know, I know your follow-up question is Mexico going to pay for the wall? There are a lot of different ways of getting Mexico to contribute to doing this, and there are different ways of defining how exactly they pay for it. Point is, he has a promise that he made to the American people, which is to secure our border. A wall is a big part of that. We agree with that goal, and we will be working with him to finance construction of the physical barrier, including the wall on the southern border. The law is already on the books. It's been sitting there for years. I voted for it like 10 years ago, but nothing has gotten done, and now we have a president who actually wants to secure the border, and we are all in favor of doing that.
I think a lot of people are in favor of securing the border on both sides of the aisle, but the estimates are $8 billion to $14 billion.
That's about right.
And the question is whether or not that's an effective way to really seal the border. I think you do have to have, I think there are more things than just a border security on the border. I think you have to have interior enforcement. There's a long conversation we can have about how to enforce our immigration laws. But physically securing the border is essential. Look, we have a massive heroin opioid epidemic problem in America. Part of that is because of drugs coming from the cartels from the South. We have national security concerns. There are lots of concerns which must be addressed by actually securing our border. And so a physical security barrier on the border is something I voted for, like I said, I think in 2006 or 2007. Chuck Schumer, my friend, voted for that as well back in those days. So now we have to get on with actually doing it. What is the message, though, to send to our allies that we're building a wall separating us from them, and Mexico's not too happy of it, and Mexico president says they're not going to pay for it?
Well, sovereign countries have the right, and I would argue the responsibility of securing their borders and controlling who comes and goes in their country. All sovereign countries have that right. We have not exercised that right. We're going to now.
What about the dreamers? The president, I don't think, has touched on that. He has seemed to indicate that he wants to go after people who are likely to cause crime in this country or terrorism, but we've got this whole category of dreamers. What about the dreamers?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think he wants to make sure is handled compassionately, that we don't pull the rug out from under people because of this situation that they are in. So this is really an executive order, and the ones that I think that are coming are focused on national security on the border, on whether terrorists are trying to infiltrate the refugee population. And that issue is something that we're going to be dealing with later, and we believe legislation is the way to fix this problem.
So dreamers today, can they count on you? And those would be the people who are brought here.
That's what we've been saying all along.
Okay.
This
so
is an
they
issue.
don't have to worry.
They don't have to worry. We're focused on physical security of the border. We're focused on those who are coming to do us harm from terrorist states and things like that. That is our focus, and it's on criminal aliens, people who are violent criminals who have not been deported. Those are the things the president said he's going to focus on. That's the legislation he's asked us to focus on for the moment, and that's what we're dealing with.
All right, and he says he's going to do away with the sort of the catch and the release. He wants to build more detention centers. Are you in favor of that?
Yeah, we've always been in favor of that. That's been a long part of our immigration policy. That is a part of our national security strategy that we as Republicans ran on all through 2016.
Are we going to get a comprehensive immigration plan out of the Congress? Because I mean, in addition to issues like borders, we also have people overstay their visas. I mean, that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I've never believed that one big bill is the way to go. These things collapse under their own weight. In massive legislation, you always get ugly provisions get tucked into it. So we really believe that the smartest way to do this is to do it in a piecemeal, step-by-step way to get it right. And the first focus has got to be security. So the first goal here is security, internal security, interior enforcement, external security, border enforcement, get those right, make sure that violent criminals aren't roaming our streets. Those are the things that we're focused on right now. And then when we have confidence that we've actually figured that problem out, then I believe we should fix this broken legal immigration system, which isn't working for anybody. You mentioned visa tracking. That's something that we think is very important as far as our security. About 40% of people who are undocumented are people who came and overstayed. They came legally, but they overstayed their visas. So this is a complicated problem that we want to fix on a step-by-step basis, prioritizing national security and border security first.
Today there was a report that the White House has as a memorandum floating around there that says that there will be black sites, or at least a review.
It's a bogus deal.
Well, let me just say is that Sean Spicer has said that it's not a White House document, but other news organizations, I think even NBC, has confirmed that the document exists, that perhaps it's the Trump administration.
No, it's not the Trump administration.
So it doesn't exist. You're saying it doesn't exist at all?
No, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but this was not written by the Trump administration.
Okay, who is it written by?
I don't even know the person's name.
Does it exist?
Look, you have to ask the administration, but my understanding is this was written by somebody who worked on the transition before, who's not in the Trump administration. This is not a product of the administration. That's the point that I think is noteworthy.
Where is this? I mean, is it actually?
I don't know. I'm in the Congress. I'm not in the administration.
But I mean, I've seen all these reports, and everyone seems so
Here's the
talking
point that
about
matters.
it today.
This is not something the Trump administration is planning on, working on, or we're talking about. That's the point that I think matters here.
So, and what about this sort of the companion issue, enhanced interrogation? That's currently against the law. Is that going to be brought back into discussion?
That's not something we've been discussing. I think this came up probably in Mike Pompeo's confirmation hearings. We're a humane country. We've got to make sure that we find the intelligence, but we have to do it in a humane way, following the law.
Can you work with President Trump?
Of course I can. I do work with President Trump. Not can I do work with President Trump. I work with him quite closely, actually.
How often?
I've spent more time talking with this president in the last few days, I think, than I would just on a limb here, than I've probably talked with this last president in the last 6 months. So this is something that he is working very closely, hand in glove, with Congress.
What about the executive actions? Is that going to be a problem at some time? I mean, he understands sort of the division between executive actions and the job of the Congress to legislate.
I think he does understand that. We've talked a great deal about the separation of powers in the Constitution, and we're very excited about what he's doing, because what he is doing is pulling back what we see as unconstitutional executive actions from the past president. So what he is doing is taking away the executive overreach that President Obama did, which we thought exceeded his powers. So we see President Trump actually reclaiming the proper role of the executive and undoing a lot of damage that was done to the economy through excessive executive action by President Obama.
You raise the economy. Is free trade over in the GOP?
No, we want free trade, but we want free trade that is good. We want free trade that it levels the playing field. What I keep telling people is getting trade agreements that are good for America is good for everybody. That means we get other countries to play by our rules. You add up all the countries that we have trade agreements with, we have a surplus with them. You add up the countries we do not have a trade agreement with, that's where a massive trade deficit comes from. So our goal is to get free trade agreements, and that means we get other countries to play and live by our rules so we can level the playing field. What Donald Trump has been concerned about, what he's talked about, is when we get deals that don't level the playing field, when we get deals that aren't the kinds of best deals that we could get. We want good deals, and those are free trade deals to lower the barriers between trade between two countries. But more importantly, we're the generous country. We're the one that open our doors to other countries, and in many cases we get taken advantage of because of that. And we want to have trade agreements that give us a level playing field, get other countries to respect the rule of law, intellectual property rights, lower their taxes to our barriers. That's good for us, and that is something that I do believe that President Trump agrees with.
All right, when we pull up, were you in favor of TPP or not?
No, I didn't like this. I was in favor of the idea of TPP, but I did not support the administration, the Obama administration's TPP. There were 3 or 4 things they did in that I thought were terrible agreements that were not worth supporting.
With us pulling out, does that create a void so China's going to move in?
Well, I do have a concern. I do have a concern that if we just say no TPP and we're done, we're ignoring the region, then yes, I think we're creating a void for China. But that is not what the president's saying. I think he's now talking about engaging in countries on a bilateral basis. We just had Boris Johnson in the other day, the foreign minister of Great Britain. We have Theresa May coming here tomorrow. We're talking about starting trade talks with Great Britain. We're talking about bilateral agreements with other countries in Asia so that we can expand our influence and get countries to play by our set of rules. That, to me, is something that's really important. I said this when I passed the Trade Promotion Authority law, which allows us to get trade agreements. If we write the rules of the global economy, we will succeed in the 21st century, but we have to write those rules, we have to engage, and I think the president said TPP is not the way to do it. Going out and getting good bilateral agreements is a better way, and I'm fine with that strategy. I think that strategy can work as well.
All right, Obamacare in the next 200 days. I hear for the Democrats, they want to repeal Obamacare. And when I think of repeal, I think of just all of a sudden one day we wake up and it's gone. Is it repeal Obamacare, or you're making adjustments, refinements, amendments, changes? What are you doing?
It's repealing and replacing it with a better law.
So it's going to completely go away one day and it's going to be replaced by something the next day?
That's right, but what I think the Democrats are trying to say is, like, in February, it goes away and you won't have your health care plan tomorrow. That's not what we're talking about.
Is it a phase out? All of a sudden one day it's over and something else is there?
We're talking about passing the legislation that repeals and replaces Obamacare with a patient-centered system that brings down prices and expands choices so people have better access to more affordable health care choices and options. But that takes time to put into place. So we will, once the administration gets up and running, they haven't even processed Tom Price, who's going to be a phenomenal HHS secretary, or Seema Verma, a woman who is a Medicaid expert. They haven't even put them in place yet. We have to wait for the administration to put in place, and then we will work in conjunction with the administration, passing legislation, repealing and replacing Obamacare. When that actually takes place will take some time, and the administration will help determine how we phase one out and replace and phase in its replacement. The whole point of this, though, is to make sure that we don't pull the rug out from anybody in the meantime. But the reason we're acting now is because Obamacare is collapsing under its own weight.
When Obamacare was passed in 2009, the Republicans are very upset because it gave so much authority to the Secretary of HHS, which was Sebelius at the time, and it said something like 2,500 references in a 2,300-page document.
1,400 number I used, but yeah.
Some huge number, and there's so many. So it's almost as though now you've got the situation where your guy, Price, is going to be HHS. Could you achieve that which you're trying to do almost with the power that's vested in the Secretary of HHS in the Obamacare?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. This will take a lot of legislating, because there are a lot of things that Obamacare legislated which we think contributed to the massive premium spike that's occurring. We've got 5 states with only one insurer left. 1 out of 3 counties in America have only one insurer left. And I really think that's because of the legislation. That legislation we're going to replace it with something better. But we also believe, in conjunction with this legislation, HHS, as you just mentioned, has an enormous amount of discretion that they have so far used to make it harder to get affordable health care, to make you buy what the government insists you must buy. That doesn't work. And so we think the administration can give us a lot of regulatory flexibility, which will bring more insurers in the marketplace, which means more competition, more choice, which drives down costs. So that discretion can work in a good way, or it can work in a bad way. It has worked heretofore in a very bad way, in my opinion, and I think we can do a lot to make a difference, but legislation is going to be critical.
Can you make the pledge to the American people, if they like the current doctor they have now, that they can keep it and their prices aren't going up under the new GOP Obama?
That promise was already violated.
Okay, no, but
that promise was already broken.
All right, okay, in light of that, but what people
promise.
have today, so that it's not going to get worse, for those who are really feeling hurt
Here's
by
the problem, Greta. It's already going away. Obamacare is leaving.
But people are terrified because it's confusing. It's the most confusing law. I've struggled through that law. It's very difficult.
Millions of people have already lost the plan that they liked.
But,
millions of people have
already
lost
the new
access
one, whatever
to their
they
doctors. You have 11.5 million people in what we call exchange subsidy plans. It's supposed to be 28 million this year. 11.5 million people in plans. And by the way, those plans are going up double digits every year. Their deductibles in those plans are 3 times as high as they are in what we call the large group market. People get health care from their jobs. So these plans aren't working either. Our point isn't to give them the same thing. The same thing's bad, and it's getting worse.
So they're going to get better.
Our point is to get better. Yes. Our point is we don't want to sit in the government and tell you what you have to buy. We want to make this work so that you have choices, so that we have more competition. Our goal is to make sure that everyone in this country has access to affordable health care, including people with pre-existing conditions, so they can get access to affordable coverage. That is not what you have with Obamacare.
All right, what about the people who are Medicaid who can't afford any medical care?
You know the reason why? Because doctors don't even take Medicaid by and large.
So what happens to them?
So we need to reform Medicaid as well. Our plan will be to reform Medicaid. We're not going to end Medicaid. We're going to give the governors more control and leeway to bring innovative reforms to make Medicaid work. In my state, Scott Walker, our governor, reformed Medicaid so that it actually works, so that doctors will take the program. Mike Pence and Mitch Daniels in Indiana, the woman who's coming in to run the Medicaid program at the federal level, her name is Seema Verma, a brilliant young woman. She made Indiana, healthy Indiana, work so that actually low-income people in Indiana actually have real healthcare coverage where they can get access to a doctor. Those kinds of reforms at the state level we want to see happen in all 50 states. That's not been happening under Obamacare. So we believe we can dramatically improve the way Medicaid works by giving governors more control and flexibility to innovate, to make it work for people with low income, because it's not working in so many states right now.
Okay, taxes. President Trump says he wants to reduce the taxes. Where do you see, in your conversations with him, where do you see the tax code?
Yeah, we spend a great deal of time talking about this. This is, again, one of our pieces of our 200-day plan, part of our very ambitious agenda. We really don't think we can get the kind of economic growth that we have the potential to get without tax reform. So we're working with the administration on working on tax reform. Our plan, our blueprint, we call it. You can go to better.gop and see our blueprint. That's what we're working off of. We've got to get our tax rates down.
Where do you see this going down to?
Well, he said he'd love to get 15% for businesses. We'd love that.
Is that S corporations too?
S corporations are, I won't get into all. Our plan says 20% for corporations, 25% for S corporations. You got to remember, S corporations pay one layer of tax. Corporations pay two layers of tax. So we basically see equivalent, but here's the point. The rest of the world, they tax their businesses at an average rate in the industrialized world at 23%. Our corporate rate's 35%. Our top S corp rate, small business rate's 44.6% effectively. This is killing us. Oh, and by the way, here's what the rest of the world does that we don't do. They take the tax off of their exports and place a tax on their imports. We do the opposite. We tax our exports and don't tax our imports. So we're putting ourselves, we're basically double taxing made in America products. And so what we're saying is let's equalize this so that we're on a level playing field, so that American-made goods and services are on a level playing field with the rest of the world, and let's lower our tax rates on our businesses so that we're on par with the rest of the world so that we don't keep losing our businesses. More American companies are getting bought by foreign firms, or they're becoming foreign firms, or they're outsourcing. Right now, the tax code says if you want to make something in another country and re-import it back into America, go ahead and do that. We don't want to incentivize that. We want manufacturing to return to America.
All right, how fast are you going to do that?
Growth.
Because business people plan. How fast do you expect to change the code?
Our goal is to get this done by the end of summer, which is for Congress quite fast.
And your tax is a little bit higher than the president's plan at this point?
A little bit higher only because that's the way our numbers work. Okay. So we agree. If you look at the president's plan that he ran on, it's virtually identical to the plan that the House ran on.
Where are we going to get the money?
So we're very close. Well,
because when people pay less taxes, there's less money into the Treasury, and then we've got to think about paying things to, like, whether it's Medicaid. I guess you're expecting a robust economy and people pay more taxes.
You get it from closing special interest loopholes and carve-outs.
You voted against you were one of the voters against the. What was the tax code a number of years ago, the program, where the 3,300 loopholes are going to be...
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
The bipartisan tax commission, you were on it.
Oh, Simpson-Bowles.
Simpson-Bowles, yeah, you voted against that.
It was $1 trillion tax increase. I don't want to raise taxes.
But that got rid of the 3,300 loopholes.
And it raised taxes $1 trillion. Oh, and by the way, it hollowed out our military. Oh, and by the way, it did nothing to repeal Obamacare or do entitlement reform.
So is yours an improvement?
Which is necessary to fix our budget
problem. So yours is an improvement over that?
Absolutely, it's an improvement over that. But the point you're saying, where do you get the money from? Close loopholes, close the special interest Washington carve-outs. That means more income subject to taxation, so you can lower the rates on our businesses and be fair. Here's the problem with the tax code right now. You send your money to Washington, and then if you have a special carve-out for your business, for your industry, if you do something Washington approves of, then they'll let you keep some of your money back. We don't like that. Keep your money in the first place. Let's make our companies competitive, and let's make good business decisions dominate their decision-making, not what's good for Washington carve-outs.
I find it bizarre that I bet not one member of Congress can do his or her own taxes because it's so complicated. It's very rare.
It's a testament to just how awful this thing is.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. No one understands the tax code. The former Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld tells me he sends his in and he says he did his best or something. And he pays accountants to do it.
Yeah, our tax plan, by the way, shows that the vast, vast majority of Americans, upwards of 96%, could fill out their taxes on a postcard. When we're done simplifying the tax code, getting the lobbyist carve-outs out of the tax code, lowering our rates, and letting people have a simple system, most Americans will be able to fill out their taxes on a postcard.
You're going to blow up K Street then, the lobbyists?
Yes, we will.
You're going to blow them up?
I've been trying to do this for years. I'm just so excited we finally get a chance to do this. because we had the House and the Senate and a president who is with us on getting this stuff out of the tax code, cleaning it up, and getting this thing cleaned up. If you can clean up the cesspool of the tax code and give us a pro-growth tax code, that is how you grow the economy. That's how you take power and money out of Washington and give it back to the people. And we are so excited. We have a president that is here to work with us in doing that.
One of the president's programs is an infrastructure program. And in the 2009 federal stimulus, a big component of it was infrastructure, which a lot of Republicans fought against the 2009 stimulus. They probably didn't like other parts of it. Where are we going to get the money for his infrastructure bill?
So first of all, I'd say that stimulus was a lot of other spending that wasn't quite as much stimulus. The thing
Did it work?
No, it didn't. It didn't work at all, actually. It just gave us a big debt hangover. But the point I'd say is stimulus infrastructure spending is not instant jobs. And that's the mistake that they made back in those days, I think. These things aren't so shovel-ready. It does take time. I think the real reason the president wants to do this is because we have a crumbling infrastructure problem. And you need a good modern infrastructure for economic growth to occur. Not just the jobs building the infrastructure, but you need to have a good highway system. You need to have a good bridge system, a good pipeline system, a good canal and waterway system for economic growth to occur, for a modern economy to succeed. And so he sees this, and we agree with him, and we've added this to our agenda at his request, that we need to upgrade and modernize America's infrastructure. Our budget in the spring is going to have to figure out how to balance those priorities and pay for it. And our big goal is to leverage private sector dollars as much as possible so that the public taxpayer isn't paying for all of this. But we do think there are innovative ways to get the private sector to pony up money to fix and modernize a lot of our infrastructure. And we think that's necessary just as a foundation for economic growth. It's not the jobs in and of themselves, which you do make by building bridges and things like this, but it's the economic growth that comes from having a modern infrastructure that is in dire need of repair.
Okay. One thing you and I always talk about, and I know you got to go, so I hope you come back and talk
You're
about it
bring
later.
up the Packers, aren't you?
No, I'm
That's
not.
so depressing.
I'm not going to bring up the
Yeah,
Packers.
good.
That was like too awful. You and I are both
right,
cheeseheads.
right,
That's
right,
too
right.
awful. So I'm smart enough that. But come back and we'll talk inner cities sometimes because
Yeah,
you and
that'd
I
be
have
great.
talked about that. About used to work for Jack Kemp, and the president talked about his inaugural address. So we'll have another discussion later on
I'd
inner
love to do
cities.
that. That'd be
Anyway,
great.
thank you, and go Pack, go,
Go
next
Pack,
year.
go. Next year. Next
What
year.
a rotten year. Anyway, nice to see you, Mr.
Yeah, you
Speaker.
too, Greta.
It's nice to see you.
Congratulations. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.